Well, that last Canadiens game was pretty weird. There were 12 goals scored. Stu, that was weird. Everyone, that was really weird. Nothing surprises me about this team anymore, as far as I'm concerned.
Nope. It was very, very weird. I actually played old timers hockey, and got in the car the first period. It was 4-0 when I got in the car, and I was driving with a couple of my buddies, and we're going to go have a post-game beer. And by the time we got to the bar, it was 4-3, and we watched the last two periods. It was insane. It was just a crazy, crazy game, and what's been a crazy season.
And once they tied it up, I said, "Geez, the Winnipeg Jets look exactly like the Canadiens looked, before they got their act together." I said, "Wow, what a difference in play!"
And with an 8 o'clock start time, they definitely put on a show for the people who could only watch the first period. So
that is very true. Are you guys all ready to talk about this game on the Hockey Inside Out podcast that we do every week?
Yeah, I'll try to treat listening to Dan Robertson call all those goals on the video.
Wow. And Pierre Hood, too. I'm sure they all got a nice vocal exercise. I'm Julian McKenzie. Alongside the usual suspects, Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette is here. Rick Green, Stanley Cup champion, is here. Jessica Rusnak from CBC Daybreak Montreal is here. Like I said off top, nothing surprises me about this Montreal Canadiens team anymore. We didn't even mention the fact that game against the Winnipeg Jets, in which they lost 8-4, snapped a 5-game winning streak for the Montreal Canadiens. Nothing surprises me about this team anymore. Stu, what were your takeaways from what you got to watch of the game the other night and that weird Chris Weidman-Mark Scheifele fight near the end of the game, which I thought was completely unnecessary?
Yeah, well, the whole thing leading into the game was, of course, the Jake Evans Scheifele incident right from the playoffs last year, wondering if somebody was going to go after Scheifele or what was going to happen. And, before the game, both players talked about it, saying it was in the past and they're ready to move on. And it was strange that Weidman was the guy who sort of went after him late in the game. I guess his teammates will appreciate the fact that he did that. But the thing that I took away from the game, when I got back home, I watched the first period, the tape of it, is that, in the pre-Martin St. Louis days, that the Habs would have rolled over and died when they were down 4-0. And that would have ended up being an 8-0 blowout probably. But they didn't. They fought back. And even at the end, when they were down, they just kept fighting and fighting and fighting. They didn't get really good goaltending from Sam Montembeault, which is something that was happening earlier in the season, or it would have been a closer game. But they just didn't give up. They never gave up. They kept fighting. They kept pushing. And it was an entertaining game to watch. Even the last couple of minutes when they were down, they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get something. And, with the Scheifele-Weidman thing, I mean, it's the code. In the morning, Scheifele was asked about the code, and he said, "What code?" But I guess, for Weidman, he's a guy who wasn't even with the Canadiens last season. Not guy known to be a big physical guy, but he's also a guy who's fighting for his life in the NHL. And he's spoken about that a few times this season. He played in the KHL last year, and he said when he was in the KHL, every morning he woke up and his goal was to get back to the NHL, and he's willing to do anything to stay here. And I think last night that was an example of it.
Yeah, I think it's reinforcing the point that if you don't have goaltending, obviously you can't win. And unfortunately, Montembeault didn't have his best game, and the results were there that everything seemed to be going by him. And in all fairness to him, he has been playing well as late, and unfortunately that wasn't his night to shine. And hopefully he'll bounce back. But as far as the Scheifele situation, I mean, there was a lot of hype about it. It was a long time ago, and Stu touched on Weidman has always spoken about. He wants to be part of the team. He'll do anything he can do to stay there. And, something like that to play out is kind of a subtle message of saying it's not his character to fight, but he wants to let everybody know that he's a real team guy, and was trying to send a message that he wants to, remain part of the team. So that little skirmish ended up, sending a very subtle message that he wants to stay. And, hats off to him for doing what he did. Not a big deal other than, leaving the message that he's a real deal, and he's part of the Montreal Canadiens and wants to stay part of it.
I just rolled my eyes after that with Mark Scheifele and the way he reacted afterwards. Weidman's not a big guy. The hands up to the crowd, really pumping them up. It wasn't like you beat a guy who is like 6'4", 220 pounds. Like Chris Weidman is not that big of a guy. He did it because what we've been saying before, that he wants to show that he is a good team player, that he has use on a team and he can be there to have his teammates back. But like Mark Scheifele, get over yourself right there. But with the Montreal Canadiens, their ability to come back in this game, especially going down 4-0 early on, the biggest problem was they kept taking too many penalties. You know, they allowed 4 power play goals, especially in that third period, was completely dominated by power play goals by the Winnipeg Jets and really sort of took this game out of reach for them. But you know what? All good things have to come to an end, and that was a fun 5-game winning streak by the Habs, and they did show some compete. They didn't lose this game 7-0, which is how I thought the game was going to go at the beginning of it.
And the Scheifele situation isn't over, as you mentioned. You know, after the fight, the way he acted, I mean, nobody won that fight. I mean, he ended up on the bottom when they fell, and you know,
He fell first.
Yeah, Josh Anderson said after the game, they weren't up. You know, thankfully, we play these guys again. And so this thing isn't over yet. And Mark Scheifele is a jerk. I mean, he really is. There's comments after last season, after he almost killed, you know, Jake Evans. And then his comments the morning of the game saying, no, I was taught to keep my head up and I always played with my head up, unlike other people. Sort of just a shot at Jake Evans, who on that, go back to that playoff goal. I mean, he did nothing wrong. He put the puck in the net and then it was a vicious predatory hit and Scheifele was suspended for it. So Mark Scheifele is just a jerk, and he showed it again after that game, after the game against the Canadiens. And
I believe that he actually did a commercial in Manitoba regarding distracted driving and making sure you keep your head up, which was kind of obviously in poor taste, but tied into that incident. And you know, makes you wonder about a guy like that to do something like that inside of the game, which I found rather strange and not showing much class.
He was also asked the morning of the game about the Ukrainian choir singing the national anthem before the game, which was such a beautiful, emotional thing. So I don't know anything about that. I don't follow the news. I just go home and I don't know what you're talking about. So again, he's a.
He doesn't follow the news.
Hold on a second. And I acknowledge I didn't make any mention of that on the show to this point, which, of course, we've all been following the news of the last few days with what's going on in Ukraine and Russia's invasion of them. How ignorant can you be to say that? To be like, oh, man, I don't follow the news and I have no clue about a war going on, a war that everyone's kind of talking about right now. And I understand there are many a different conflict taking place in different parts of the world, but like, really, dude? Like,
he's a jerk. He says, I just go home to my girlfriend and my dog and I don't pay attention to anything else that's going on.
Yeah, look, before that hit with Jake Evans, I thought I didn't really think that much of Mark Scheifele. I actually thought he was like a bright person. He was somebody who would make appearances on Sportsnet and stuff, and he would come across as this well-learned person, or at least someone who was eloquent enough to, you know, do these like hits and stuff and be in front of a camera. But I don't like how he's turned into an asshole over the last year and a bit. This is a guy who could easily be like one of the nicer dudes in the league, but he's an asshole. I'll say it. He's looking like an asshole. You can bleep out asshole if we need to. Okay. Anyway, before I keep swearing, we'll go to question 2 and talk more about Martin St. Louis, the architect of that Canadiens 5-game winning streak. Rick, in what area do you think Martin St. Louis has had the biggest impact on his team right now?
Well, I mean, up until the Winnipeg game, their defensive zone play, their goals against. I mean, it was 7 goals against, in the last 5 games, which is pretty amazing considering what they were giving up before. And again, that's, tied into goaltending, having excellent goaltending, but the team play in general, in front of the goaltender. I mean, I've never seen guys so committed to getting in shooting lanes and blocking shots. I'm like, wow, this guy blocked a shot. He got in the shooting lane and he actually hoped that the puck hit him. So, I mean, St. Louis has really gone great lengths to instill some good habits in his group. They're responding to it and they're paying the price. And it's really nice to see them, play with excitement, play with determination, playing with pride. And, it's showing up in so many areas. I mean, the list can go on as far as, the way he's been able to get all his group on board and really show up each and every night and really, show desire that they want to make the difference. And it's nice to see, and obviously overdue, and hopefully it will continue and get back on track next game.
Yeah, I think his ability to bring everyone together as a team and care for each other, that for the longest time, it seems like a team full of individuals on a sinking ship, pushing each other out of the way, trying to get off this boat. But now they seem like they're playing for each other and they're all on the same page. There's finally sort of this structure that everyone knows what the game plan is before the game. And many times in the post-game press conferences, you just kind of heard from the players that they weren't sure what they were supposed to do in that game, what the plan was. And I think it's that sense of belief as well. Especially we saw that in players like Cole Caulfield, Jeff Petry, who have really struggled, that they've been able to find their groove again and play with confidence, something that was really lacking. And I think that's something that Martin St. Louis has done a good job doing, is bringing that belief and that confidence back to this team that just seemed so down. Like after, for example, the loss against Winnipeg, if this was a few months ago, they would have sounded so down during it. And after the game, it was like, yeah, we lost. We didn't play our best, but it's one game. We will get back to it. And you haven't kind of got that vibe from this team in a really long time.
Yeah, after Dominique Ducharme's last game, when they got blown out 7-1 by the Devils at the Bell Center, and Josh Anderson talked about how embarrassing it was and how it wasn't fun to come to the rink anymore and how they needed to refresh. And Marty St. Louis made it fun. The practices are fun to watch. The guys are having fun in the practices, all these little mini 3-on-3 games they're playing. You can tell they're having fun coming back to the rink. They're playing as a team, which they weren't before. Jeff Petry has even said that now he maybe doesn't want to be traded. Marty St. Louis is the kind of coach that would make him want to stay in Montreal. And, Petry was the most outspoken critic of Dominique Ducharme. I wrote a column about it saying it was sort of out of character for Petry to be like that. But I think he was the voice for the locker room. I think he was speaking up for all his teammates. And he explained the other day, Petry, about how the defensive zone, they were like switching off, like a defenseman could only follow a guy so far in the zone, then they had to switch. And he said that second delay when they had to switch who was covering who opened everything up. And as Rick knows, as a former player and coach, they do so much video in the NHL. Teams were obviously picking up what the Canadiens were doing wrong in their defensive zone, and we're taking advantage of it. And I think the players are just frustrated that Ducharme wouldn't switch it, wouldn't change. And, Petry is one of the most outspoken critics. And now, Petry said now the new system they're playing, as soon as the puck's on their stick, they're thinking offense. Even if it's in the defensive zone, they get the puck, let's go, let's play offense. And we've seen that. And the guys are having fun playing the system they're playing. They're coming together. They're joining as a team. And Marty St. Louis, I had a one-on-one with him last week for about 20 minutes. And he's a very intense, smart guy. When he talks, he makes sense. And I don't think what Dominique Ducharme was telling the players was making sense. And Marty St. Louis comes in the room as a Hall of Famer, instant credibility. Great I've written, if coaching doesn't work out, he could be a motivational speaker. Fantastic. And he's fired the guys up, and he's made this season moving forward. He talked about how he's broken the season into 7-game segments, and he wants them to win each of the 7 games. And I asked him, where'd that come from? He said he played on teams that weren't going to the playoffs. It's just a way to set little goals. And you think back to their first 7 games with Marty St. Louis, they lost their first 3 games and they came back and won 4 straight. So how much of that was because the players had in the back of their mind, let's win this 7-game series? And they did. So it's a great way to motivate the players. And, they're having fun and they're motivated now, which they weren't under Dominique Ducharme.
And I really believe, looking at them, they're reacting much quicker now to situations and not afraid of, making mistakes, so to speak. That when they see a play happening, the first guy's initiating, the second guy's reading off him. So they're not caught in between so much. And, this is helping, I think, their overall game when it comes down to doing a good job in the defensive zone and then helping them out in the transition when it comes to, okay, we now have possession, let's go. And up the ice they go. And they got a lot of guys that are stretched out that are causing a lot of problems for the opposition defense because the guys are in behind them. And, that puck is going ahead versus, holding on to it too long and trying to make short plays all the time. If they're not there, they don't try and use that. So a lot of good positive things that the players are enjoying. And let's face it, at this time of year, after the season that's been going on, he's trying to keep practices light. The guys are somewhat sick and tired of the X's and O's, so to speak. Now it's just a question of, come to the ring, get a workout in. It's a you know what you have to do. So do it each and every shift, and we'll add things up at the end of the year. And I'm quite sure they're going to see more positive things at the end of the year, obviously, than what we've seen beforehand.
Yeah, and as Marty St. Louis said when he first came in, there's a lot of things he wants to do, but he's going to do them one at a time. Like, he's not going to put too much on the guys at the same time. Start working. Obviously, the defensive zone was one of the first things he worked on, and he'll continue to work on more things. And, you know, the game against Winnipeg, poor goaltending came back to haunt them again, but they didn't give up. I think earlier when they were getting poor goaltending and the goalie would let in 2 or 3 bad goals, it was like, this game's over, and they just sort of mail it in. They didn't do that against Winnipeg.
And I'm sure for Jeff Molson, if all goes well, the Bell Center will be back to full capacity starting on March 14th. That, you know, before this, how many people were going to be running out to go watch buy tickets to go watch the Montreal Canadiens play at home? Probably not many. But now at least they're playing an entertaining form of hockey that they probably won't win every night, but you'll see goals being scored at the Bell Center, which was not the case.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, Jess, is we've seen the Canadiens are actually advertising now for their season ticket waiting list. I've never seen that before. So it makes me wonder, probably the waiting list won't be that long now. I'm sure a lot of people were turned off by the hockey played earlier this season, and the Canadiens are now advertising season tickets. As I said, I haven't seen that. So they're selling the product. Trying to sell the product, and the product on the ice now at least is entertaining. Whereas before, not only were they bad, they were brutally boring also.
Yeah, thank God they're not boring anymore. For the next question, we go to the front office with Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes running everything behind the scenes. We have not heard the word rebuild from them yet. We know Tyler Toffoli's gone. We know there are other pieces that could be shipped out ahead of the trade deadline. But no one's really saying it's an actual rebuild. There was a report going around from my colleague Pierre Lebrun suggesting that the Canadiens might actually be aggressive in the free agency period. So what's going on here? Jess, do you think that the recent run of, I guess, success, if you want to put it that way, they're still in last place, has anything to do with whatever plans, whether it's a rebuild or an aggressive retool, that the Canadiens front office staff may want to do with the team going forward?
I like that aggressive retool way of putting it. No, I think that they can't. They can't say, look, we won 5 games in a row. We brought Martin St. Louis in here and all of our problems are now fixed. And next year, guess what? We'll be contending for the Stanley Cup. That, you know, you can't be blinded by your recent success. There's still a lot of holes left on this team that they have to fix. And if they do want to attract players through free agency, if you're a player, say, you know, in your late 20s, early 30s, would you want to come and sign here in Montreal? Well, you have to give them a reason why, to say, hey, we've added this player. We've got, you know, this prospect coming up. So maybe not next year. We won't be, you know, going far in the playoffs, but 2-3 years from now, this is a team on its way to being a Stanley Cup contending team, the way that every NHL team wants to be. So they have to give those free agents something to look for. So they definitely have to do something with this team. If it's a rebuild, an aggressive retool, I don't know. Everyone's always afraid to use those words, but something has to happen. They have to do a cleanup and start building this team back together.
Yeah, Kent Hughes said, you know, he's not going to use the word rebuild or reset or whatever. They're just looking to improve this team. And I think Marty St. Louis has sped up the process. When Jeff Gorton first took the job, he said that Dominique Ducharme's job was safe until the end of the season. I think a lot of that had to do with Jeff Molson. I'm pretty sure when Jeff Molson was hiring Gorton, he told him, look, I'm already paying Claude Julien $5 million this season. I just signed this guy to a 3-year, $5 million contract. I don't want to pay another coach. But it got so bad under Ducharme, they had to do something. I mean, there was too many games left in the season to continue with the way things were going. Marty St. Louis comes in, and it's a total refreshed team, a better-looking team. Jeff Petry saying, maybe I don't want to be traded now. Guys are having fun. When Vincent Lecavalier was hired as a consultant, he said that one of the selling points for getting free agents to come to Montreal would be Marty Lapointe as a coach. Come play for a coach who wants to play an offensive system. So a total rebuild, I don't think is necessary. You're not going to trade everybody. Hughes said, is it going to be a fire sale? You're going to trade 5 guys before the deadline. And he said, I'm not planning to, but if I get 5 offers that I can't refuse, I will. There's a legitimate number 1 line here now with Caulfield, Suzuki, and Josh Anderson. They look really good. The goaltending's an issue. The elephant in the room, of course, is Carey Price's contract. What's going to happen with Carey? Is he going to play again? Is he not going to play again? But, they got rid of Toffoli. They're going to make a few other trades and clear up some salary cap space. And as LeBrun reported, don't be surprised if they are aggressive in the free agent market to try and bring in some guys to boost this team. So, you look at Buffalo, you look at Edmonton, you look at how many top picks Buffalo's had, and they're still terrible. And you look at Edmonton, the players they have, they still struggle just to get in the playoffs. So this thing that, you're going to tank, you're going to get a first overall pick or maybe get a first overall, this 18-year-old kid is going to come in and save the franchise. Look at Alexis Lafreniere with the Rangers. He was dubbed like this super kid coming in. He's like a third liner now with the Rangers. That's not, you don't build a hockey team around an 18-year-old kid unless it's Sidney Crosby. Connor McDavid in Edmonton, it hasn't, Edmonton struggles and they have two of the best players in the NHL. So to me, I understand why Hughes wouldn't use the word rebuild. And they have some key pieces. They have Romanov. They have a lot of young guys. They have, young guys coming up in the system. So I think few tweaks here and there. I think this team can be a competitive team within maybe 3 years.
And I don't think the recent success is going to affect the mindset of the management wanting to make changes. I think what it has allowed them is to really look at the players that they have in the organization and have a real good assessment of okay, are these the type of players that we want in our organization moving forward? Younger, faster, character, all those things, pride, all those things that they would like to, associate with the Montreal Canadiens. It has, allowed them to have a real serious look at their personnel. And I know one thing for sure, that they are not going to stand pat. Again, I shouldn't say that because stranger things have happened in the business, but changes will be made. Are they concerned about maybe, not having such a high pick when it comes down to draft time? Maybe a little bit, but I know that they're going to be looking at all kinds of different options up until the trading deadline. I'm quite sure we're going to see quite a few different faces in the organization, and they're going to entertain all kinds of offers. And I think there's going to be a different group in that dressing room, and they have had time to assess the guys that they like to keep around. And now with them playing well, which is a perfect time for other teams to show interest in their players when they're playing well, they might be able to get more for some of these guys that fit the mix than what they were able to get before they had this success. So we're going to be watching closely to see the bodies that will be moved out, because I really don't think they have much choice in getting something back for the unrestricted free agent guys. Now it's just a matter of how much they can get for these guys.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, Rick, Jeff Petry's comments the other day, even if they do trade him now, his trade value went up. I mean, he said, I'm Marty St. Louis, the kind of coach that I would stay here and play for. So other GMs around the league thinking Jeff Petry's disgruntled, he wants out, we'll sort of lowball offer, or the guy wants to leave. Now, Ken Hughes is saying, Petry's happy here now under the coach. Unless you blow my socks off, I'm not, your offer's not good enough. He's happy to stay here. I'm not in a rush to trade him. If he's happy.
Let me jump on that. Let's jump on that, because I did want to follow up and ask that. If you're the Canadiens right now and you look at Jeff Petry and how much he seems to enjoy the system that he's in right now, and he is putting up some more points under Martin St. Louis, he may very well want to stay. But if you're Kent Hughes, do you trade him? Do you even consider that possibility? Like, I'm wondering, because you've brought that up multiple times on today's show. So I'm wondering what you think.
I think it depends what the offer is. And I think if you're going to trade him, who's going to replace Ben Sherratt's gone? They're going to be gone. Petry, who's going to replace their minutes? Who's going to be the top defenseman moving forward? You have to have somebody there. And with Petry looked good against Winnipeg. He's looked good since Marty St. Louis took over. He looks like the defenseman we saw last season, which is the reason why he was given that long-term contract. So if he's happy to stay here, I wouldn't be in a rush to move him out. And again, unless the deal is something you can't turn down, as Ken Hughes said, if it's an incredible offer, you make it. But at this point, I think Ken Hughes is saying, okay, maybe we don't have, he had said all along, I'm not going to trade him unless it's a deal that works for both teams. So, he seems happier. The COVID restrictions are coming off, which is one of the things his wife wasn't happy with and why she decided to stay back in Michigan. So, it's, as I said earlier, the guys are having fun, and Jeff Petry's having fun playing hockey again. It shows on and off the ice.
And, he's still under contract for another 3 years. I mean, so there's what's the sense of urgency? The only sense from all of this is he's 34 years old. Assessing the group moving forward, is he going to be part of the mix? He's a good player. But I'm quite sure that there's discussions about, okay, what could we get in return for him to maybe make our team a little bit younger? And, really the bottom line out of all of this is, has Jeff Petry said to the management guys, listen, if you get a deal for me, please move me? I mean, does he, he's going to say, yeah, I'm enjoying, what's going on. They're winning. He's playing a little bit better, all good. But the underlying thing here is, does he really want to be part of this process of retooling, rebuild, whatever, in the future? Does he want to win? Does he want to get an opportunity to get a chance to the finals again? That's a big question mark. And I think we'll see that pretty soon, but there's no rush, obviously, when he's under contract for another 3 years to carry on status quo and then assess it maybe in the off season.
Yeah, Petry. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
No, I was just going to say, with a player like Jeff Petry, there's no rush right now. You can see what happens in the summertime, what's available for a trade for Jeff Petry. It might be a defenseman that's a little bit younger, not as proven in the NHL, to come in and fill those minutes that Jeff Petry would leave behind. And you would need to grow with this player and let them make the kind of mistakes. But that kind of seems to be the route that this team is on, that it really is starting to grow the team again. And you can afford to bring on those younger players that in a few years will develop into a much stronger player.
Yeah, I don't think you trade Jeff Petry just for draft picks. I think if you trade him, you have to have a young defenseman who's playing in the NHL now, coming back and return. And Petry just highlights just how unhappy guys were with Dominique Ducharme as coach. As I mentioned, I think he was a spokesperson for the team. Jeff Petry, twice he had an opportunity to leave Montreal as a free agent. He never even tested the free agent market. He just re-signed. He liked playing here. His family seemed happy here. His wife was happy here. His 3 kids were happy here. And then all of a sudden, everything just fell apart. A combination of things. Unhappy with the coach, COVID restrictions, everything, and it wasn't fun anymore. And I think he just highlights, and every game we watch now with the Canadiens just highlight with Dominic how bad things were under Dominique Ducharme and how the guys just didn't want to play the system. They weren't buying what he was selling, and I think it was a frustration level. And I think Jeff Petry was basically pleading the management, like, do something. I'm not just speaking for myself. I asked him the question the other day, when you were speaking and criticized, were you just speaking for yourself, or were you the voice from the room? And he said, yeah, it was basically, it was personal and general. There was a frustration on the team about what was happening. It showed on the ice. This is a team that wasn't able to win 2 games in a row with Dominique Ducharme, and then all of a sudden they win 5 straight with Marty St. Louis. It just speaks volumes about just how bad the situation was with this team in the locker room.
That's not by accident.
And Stu, you touched on, listen, you got to be careful not to thin yourself out too much on the blue line without having guys being able to do the job. And we all know the most intelligent guys on the team are the defensemen. So, you have to handle them. You have to handle them carefully, and But in all seriousness, you've got to have some guys that can play, and you can't play the hope game that this guy's going to turn out and hope that he's going to be a good defenseman. Yeah, they have some potential players in the system, but are they ready to step in and fill that void if you really thin out too much with experienced guys on the blue line that are supposed to be the bright ones?
What's that line? Never trust the forward, Rick? That's it. Well, the other thing we were talking earlier about, the season ticket advertising going on. A full rebuild means you're going to be bad for like 5 years. We've seen a lot of bad hockey this year with the Canadiens. We've seen fans tune out. I've had so many friends saying, I can't even watch them on TV anymore. They're so boring. Jeff Molson has taken a hit. No fans through COVID last season, a lot of games this season. It's still a business. They got to put an entertaining product on the ice. And I don't think his taste for blowing everything up and being horrible for 5 years, I don't think he wants to do that. I think it's a rebuild, reset, whatever you want to call it. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of pieces here already. And I think it's people talk about 5-year plans. I think here maybe it's a 2 or 3 year plan they have to try and turn this team around and at least make them a playoff team, if not a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, kind of like what the Rangers ended up doing. That being said, they got fortunate with some of the players that kind of landed their way. And I don't think they want to be like the Sabres, who are going on a decade without a playoff appearance. And the Senators, I think, are going on 5 without a playoff appearance. So, and obviously Edmonton, you brought them up earlier. They have 2 of the best players in the world. they still have not reached the levels that they would want to be at. The Canadiens can say, unlike some of those other teams, they've been to a Stanley Cup final in the last few years, though. We'll have to wait and see with how the Gorton Hughes regime kind of handles things and shake those things out. By the way, Rick, you ain't slick for that defenseman comment. That was really good. That was a really good joke. But you're right, though. Defensemen are smart. You're right. Yeah. That's true. That's very true.
Thank you. Yes, that's some things don't change, but the forwards never believed us. But they were the first ones to whine that we held the puck too long and we didn't get the puck up to them, and et cetera, et cetera. So, anyways, it's all good, but it's good. It's going to be interesting to see the personnel changes that are about to come. So.
Well, Mark Scheifele is an example of how some forwards aren't too smart.
Oh, look at us. We found a way to make it all full circle here on the Hockey Inside Out show, which is pro defenseman, and we have mixed reviews on Mark Scheifele. Subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. I think we're at 11,000 subscribers, so yay us. That's great. That's awesome. I'll double check that number. If we're not at that number, we should be very close. And of course, visit hockeyinsideout.com for other full episodes and subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter, montrealgazette.com/newsletter. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode.